Welcome to this user interface updates from the virtual staff room. These are the updates that were received in April. So we're looking back a month to the ones that you missed in April. Hopefully you'll have found some already, but you will find that you would have missed some. I'll go through them in turn. The Q&A is already turned on. He's saying that I've double checked that it is turned on. I'll check that it is turned on. Yep, so you can always ask questions in the Q&A. You can always ask questions in the in-call messages. But if there's nothing else, then I will say thanks for coming along, and here we go. So first one is you've got new emoji reactions in your Google Docs. So when you're on the web, if you've noticed this, when you highlight things, so you can see my word us is highlighted here, you get this little panel jumps out. You might not necessarily get the top one, which is a link to the mote, to write a mote note, which is an audio of a mote note. That's adding a comment. That's turning yourself into edit mode. That was one that was arrived about a year ago. And there's now the emotion ones there. So you can start to add emotions, but you can make them gender neutral. You can change skin tone, can make gender preference changes and things. So it's first of all, the new emoji set is a much wider range of emoji options to reflect you as a person, rather than them being these standard kind of, they were very yellow colored, weren't they, at the original set of emoji ones. So you can make any changes you want to make them fit with the persona that you want to present. So that's really nice that they're there. And it's kind of a handy thing to do. We like emojis. People respond to emojis quite positively, I think. So it's a good thing for them to be there. So that's the first one, and that's in Google Docs. So you've highlighted this panel on the right here, this little pop out doesn't appear until you highlight something, don't forget. So don't go looking for it unless you highlight a word. So that's the first thing. Okay, this one, I found this one very useful. I've been using this week. I've been testing some things out in Google Meet. And if you're in Google Meet for more than 2 minutes, you get a little pop-up saying, are you still there? And if you're not, don't respond, then it turns itself off. Because I certainly know that I have accidentally left Google Meets turned on in the past, unnecessarily. Oh, that's been open since about on one memorable occasion. I remember leaving it on a Friday evening, and then when I came back on Monday morning, it was still open. I mean, there's no impact. No one was in the office. The office was all closed up. But it's just interesting that they built that in, which I think is very, very sensible to do. And the other picture in there is that you've got all the host settings in a single place. You won't have it on yours. Chris and I will, because we are both hosts in this call. But in the bottom right-hand corner of your Google Meet, you've got, when you are a host, you've got 5 buttons. You'll be able to see 4, but when you're a host, you have 5. And the 5th one is on the far right, and it's a shield. And when you click on the shield, the second image on this slide is the menu that you get. One thing that's worth noting is you've now got the option to turn attendance tracking on or off. If you look at that second image on the right and go to the very bottom of it, you'll see that attendance tracking is turned off by default. So if you suddenly think, oh, I need a register of who attended, then make sure you take the time to go into the host tools, scroll down and click on attendance tracking. So you've got that turned on. And it will now track attendance for a meeting of more than one. So if there's just 2 of you in there, you can now get attendance tracking, which is kind of quite handy. And then all the other controls you can see, you can go in there and have a play when you're next to host. One thing I will say that I didn't do it today, interestingly, because I arrived a little bit late, but I try with public events like this to always go in a few minutes ahead and stop the screen sharing and stop the chat messages, just in case we get bombed. Because the first thing they do is they invade the chat, invite lots of other people in by sending them a link, but they also share their screen with pictures that are usually inappropriate. So to turn those off for the entire, those who are invited as well as those aren't, is kind of handy, kind of security feature, if you like, for the start of a Google Meet. And I do that as a kind of a standard thing at the beginning of Meets. Anything that's important that I don't want to be bombed and it keeps me control, I do that. And then also anything that's public like today. So that's additional improvements in Google Meet. You can now join a Google Meet from a Docs, Sheets and Slides. And I hear you all saying, no, mate, you've been able to do that for ages, Paul. Yes, you have, sort of. You've been able to present from a Google Google Sheets, Docs, or Slides, but you haven't been. What you can now do is you select the form, the Meet you're going to join, and then you have two options to either join or go straight into present mode. So it's kind of useful to be able to do both now rather than just do one. It was originally you could just present, that was all. It's on by default if you're an admin person. That's the same as always. And you can turn it on or off by OU. So if there's a use case, I mean, it's new and I'm trying to wonder about a use case. But you could say, well, let staff do that, but I won't let students do that, for example. Might be a use case for that. Jim, you have a question?
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just that your screen's corrupted again, Paul, like it did once before when you were going through a presentation. I don't know if that's Wi-Fi related or whether it's something to do with slides, or it might just be my view of it, but I think it's messed up on the screen for some reason.
Is that true for everyone? Let me turn my screen
off. Yeah, Chris is nodding, so I think it's for everybody, yeah.
And I'm going to stop presenting and start presenting again. Thanks for that, Jamie. I'm actually using it in present mode, so I wonder if it's because of the mode I've chosen.
Yeah, not sure.
No, I wonder if it did it.
If your Wi-Fi is holding up okay, then maybe it's something.
Yeah, no, I mean everything else is working okay.
So. Yeah, it's fine now. Absolutely fine now.
There we go. Okay, I'll experiment with that in my later and see if I can work out why it is. Okay, so that's Docs, Sheets, and Slides. I did test it early last week, and I'm still not getting the video feeds inside the doc. Which it kind of looks, if you look at the little GIF that's showing on the slide, it suggests that the video, the Meet actually also kind of comes to the doc as well as the doc going to the Meet. And I haven't seen this yet in my interface, but I presume that's going to arrive fairly shortly. But it might be that it wasn't here at the beginning of last week and it is there now. I haven't tested it today. So it might be that it's already there. Who knows? Okay, so that's joining a Google Meet from Docs, Sheets, and Slides. This one is going to be a real bonus for me. It's going to make a huge difference. I'm really looking forward to this. We're now with Google Sheets. It will start to make sensible corrections for formulas or suggest them. And the number of times you think you've got that formula sorted and there's one comma missing or you've referenced the wrong range or whatever it happens to be. And that seems to me really useful, that it's using Google's AI to think, well, actually, based on the data that I've got in this sheet, I know that you've done that, but I think this might be sensible. And the three examples there, VLOOKUPs are the bane of my life. If I get a detail wrong, I can never work out what the error messages mean. So if it's giving me plain English suggestions about you need to do this, then that is going to be so helpful. Because I can use VLOOKUP, but I just occasionally make a mistake and I can never work out what the errors mean. So that'd be really useful. Okay, so that's really useful to have. And when it pops up, like lots of the smart chips that are beginning to pop up now, you have the option to accept it or reject it. So if you accept it, it will add the correction straight away for you without you having to do anything. If you reject it because you think there's a better solution, then it will leave it as it is and you have to go and find a different way to solve it. And you can also go into tools and enable or disable formula corrections. So if you feel, my skills in Sheets are far beyond any AI that Google might be able to offer for the moment, then you can always go and turn it off and sort it out for yourself. But that feels to me like a really useful tool. And I'm certain, I don't know if Owen is on the line. If we'd had it 2 months ago, Owen, we might have made our job a lot quicker on some of the sheets we've been working on, mightn't we? That's for sure. So I look forward to that. I've tested it late last week. It's not here yet, but I'll talk about the rollout program of all these functions at the end, just to remind you. So that's intelligent corrections. So this one is specifically about iOS devices. It confused me slightly. And I read the details and it sounds like it's great, but I'm thinking that it can be quite a hassle if I've read the help file correctly, but I'm happy to be corrected. It's basically, you can specify which chat notifications from chat and chat, that's individual chats and chat spaces and Gmail, you receive when you're in focus mode. So focus mode is when you're focused on another task and it kind of gives you that kind of temporary out of office type notification. This is on iOS devices only for the moment. It might be that Android will follow, but it's on iOS. But reading the documentation, it looks like you've got to go in and do it for individual chat and space feeds. So if you've got to do it, you've got lots like I have. I've got 30, 40 different Google Spaces that I communicate through. So to have to go and do it through them all, I think is a bit of a faff. So I'm not sure how useful it is at the moment, but I'm hoping that I've just misread the documentation, but that did seem to be what it was suggesting. So Apple devices only, or tablets or phones. But you can be a bit more specific about, I do want to receive notifications from that because that's important. I can't ignore that even though I'm focusing on something else. But actually, I'll close that and that down. So it just gives you a bit more control about what you do and don't see whilst you're focusing on something else. Okay, this one is for Education Plus only, because it's to do with cloud search. Cloud search is a full-blown Google search for your account. It doesn't break any sharing permissions that are in place at the moment, so it won't find documents according to your search criteria that you aren't shared into. But it will search it'll search for your calendar, your Gmail, your docs, your sites, your groups. So it's a really powerful tool, and I use it lots because I kind of lose track of some of the threads of the things that we do. So it's really useful. And what this now does is it says, well, actually, I'm going to reorder the docs that I found because this one has been opened loads this week. So I'm assuming this might be the one that you're looking for. So it gives you makes a judgment about the most popular documents in the search criteria that meet the search criteria, and will surface those at the top of the list rather than by any other order. So that seems to be a really sensible thing because it will hopefully improve the efficiency of that search for you. But that's Education Plus account holders only. Oh, excuse me. So this is a video capture of the settings in Google Meet for this meet, which I took this morning. And you can see that I've actually already added Chris in as a co-host this morning. So in Google Calendar, if you've got a meeting and you need more than one host, and in this example, it's great. If someone requests to arrive after we've started, then Chris can allow them in because he's a host. But I was actually able to set Chris as a host this morning ahead of the meeting. And until this functionality arrived, you had to wait till the meeting to do it. And if you forgot, then there was all that palaver. I like the word palaver of getting it all sorted. So the fact that you can do it ahead of time now is really useful. And it's literally going to your calendar, click on the cog inside the calendar, and you'll see the hosts and breakout rooms and co-hosts. So it's in there. So that's really good. Yeah, and I've already used that, and it's already in place for our domain. Okay, this is in Apple as well. So on your phone again, you may have noticed a good few months ago now that the little plus sign, and you'll see that the menu popping up, has appeared in Google Chat. And a really nice additional tool that it's about the kind of the efficiencies of the workflows. That if you want to make a calendar appointment and you're chatting with someone about a suitable time and you agree that time, you don't then have to go to your calendar to click on the time you've agreed to set it. You can actually do it straight from within the chat. And there's actually a Meet bot that will actually automatically suggest times in chat, but it shows you other things. You can generate a link for a thing, you can take a photo. So it just gives you more tools that you can do inside your Apple device. Okay, in Android and not in Android, on the web-based thing, you can now also add documents. So you can create a document inside a doc, slide, and sheets inside a Google Chat without having to go somewhere and then share it into the thing. It does all the sharing automatically, which is really useful. But this one is that same button on the mobile now added to iOS devices. So that's that one. And that's it. Those are all the updates for this month. I'll go back a slide. So we're on the last one. Any questions? Let's have a look see if there are any comments or questions in the chat. There's nothing in the in-call messages. There's nothing in Q&A. So any thoughts from anyone about any? I was going to do the updates for you, but have a think about any questions you might have. Yeah. I'll come to the questions in a minute. I said to talk about the updates in case people aren't aware. Updates generally, the rollout for updates takes between 10 and 15 days, is what Google says, depending on what it is. And they don't do it on every single domain all at once, which is sensible. Some of them do take slightly longer, but it's rare for it to be that long. So as I went through those, I went through them in date order. So the later ones were with the high dates in April. So the 25th onwards, there were 2 or 3 updates from there. So they probably only just arrived or are about to arrive if you're the last on the list to have your updates applied. So don't assume that it's not worked if they're not there yet. Whenever there's a decision that the admin person has to do to turn it on, I always include that in the information. So the ones today, I think we're all on by default, so that shouldn't affect them unless the admin person has gone in and turned it off for you for some reason. So it probably is there by now. But there. So do the emojis need switching on in the background? I don't remember any admin setting for that. Is it not on your domain yet, Jason?
No, not yet, Paul.
No, okay. I don't remember what the date of that one was. It was kind of early on, wasn't it? So you would have thought that would be there. Have you just tried it on a doc?
Yeah, I've got everything but the emojis.
That's interesting. Let me just grab a document. Share this tab instead. I'm sure I'm beginning to doubt myself now, but I'm sure that I did it this morning and it worked fine. But it could just be a question of waiting. That's interesting. Oh, there, yeah, it just took a while to arrive. There we go. So that shocked me for a minute. So there you go. There's my emoji reaction. Then you get a slightly different kind of comment box. So yeah, so it is there for me. It's not just that you didn't wait, because mine took a while to arrive, maybe. Is that what it was?
No, it's still not showing, Paul.
So,
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Whilst you're having a think to my question, I have a visitor. You may have noticed we are recording this session, Jane. Okay, I'm gonna have to just leave you just for a moment. Excuse me 1 second.
No problem at all, Paul. Just while Paul's gone for a second, I just wanted to chip in there because one of the new features that I noticed that sort of went live almost quietly in a way is that drop-down feature in Docs. I don't know if you've used that at all, Jason, or anybody else on the call. Looks like quite a nice little feature that I can imagine from a teaching point of view that it's a nice little feature to have in terms of adding in sort of quizzes or status updates on a piece of project work, that kind of thing. I don't know if you've had a play with that, Jason, at all, or if you've noticed it.
No, I've not noticed it yet, Jamie. Which one is it?
It's under Insert in Google Docs. I think it's under Insert anyway, and it's a thing called Dropdown. I noticed it went live sort of, I think in the last, well, for me, it went live in the last sort of 10 days or so, I think. It's quite a nice little feature. And I can sort of see a number of uses for it. One is like you could build a nice little sort of multiple choice type thing on there. But you could also use it, I suspect, for project work and collaboration work and things like that to update the status or something. It's just, I was just talking about the drop down feature in Docs, Paul, which for me anyway, I only recently noticed. So apologies if it's been live for a while, but it looked like a relatively new feature to me.
The drop downs, it's certainly not this month or last month. I don't remember when they did arrive.
Okay. I only really recently noticed it on my Google Docs, and it seems like the kind of feature that seems quite useful. I can imagine teachers making good use of that.
Yeah. No, it's dropped. There's a whole series of things coming into Docs now, and most of them are in the @ symbol. So I've just literally pressed the @ symbol, and there's a whole load of additional kind of, it's called a smart chip, new things that you can add in there that allow you to kind of make better use of all the tools. And there's the drop down that James just mentioned right at the very bottom. Come on, it's not behaving for me. That's interesting. Oh, it's because I just removed the @ that's why.
I just did it as an insert, and then it gives you the actual ability to build it. Whereas
mine just seems to not be behaving as selected there.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, no, you're quite right, and it's all about building in additional functionality into it. And lots of them, like I say, are in the @ menu. It tells you what things you can. Many of these things are from the menus at the top, but it's just a quicker and more efficient way of doing it. So one of the things I use it for is for adding in people. And then it will, once you've done it, you say, well, but that person's not in the thing. So I'd have to open the share, and I will often type 2 or 3 of my colleagues in straight away, because that takes a couple of seconds to appear, and then it lists them all, and then I go share. So it's kind of quite nice that I can add them all in nice and quickly without having to type their emails, because it's in the list of suggestions. So yeah, so there's lots and lots of nice additional tools inside Google Docs, but I'm still not getting that video feed in here, which I'm maybe it's there now, because I tried it last week and it wasn't. I'm going to test it now. Bring the call here. Oh, bring the call here. That's a new button. Bring the call here. Allow. So it looks like it is there now. There we go. Look at that. Fantastic. So that obviously wasn't. So like I said, 10 to 15 days, the normal update pattern. That wasn't here last week, and it's now there and available this week. So they've got the video call inside here, which is great if you're doing a presentation, don't forget, because you can now see, you can look at your presentation and you can see the delegates in the meeting, which is exactly what you want. So that's a great little new thing. And that's literally, you might have had it a while, but it's only just arrived to our domain.
I think the difference is, Paul, that now you're presenting it within the doc. You're not presenting it to the meeting. So I think there's almost the assumption that other people are working within that doc as well.
Oh, has it turned it off on the meeting?
Yeah. So
Oh, that's a shame.
and I think that no, I
Oh.
think that's one of the key differences, because otherwise it's not really new functionality, is it?
No.
But if you're all collaborating on the same document, then rather than having to go out through Google Meet and share the screen, and you kind of got one screen of your own, which is where the document's live, and one where it's being shared and demonstrated, you're all focusing on the document and your combined editing of it.
Yeah.
And still able to see other people in that sort of column on the right hand side. So I think that's where I would use it, rather than in place, rather than start a meeting from there.
I'm just thinking about people that use Google Slides. If they present their slides to a meet,
yeah,
then you would, because it goes full screen, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Unless you use the present trick that I use in the URL, then you'd lose the meet because you're looking at your presentation. So then there would be a reason for it to be in the slide deck.
Yeah, I always remember when I was doing training for the librarians in is it Nottingham that you set that up, and they really did practice what they preach, because when I'd finished going through my slide deck, I was convinced that they'd all gone away because they were just silent all the way through. And so I'd kind of brought myself back to the meeting, and oh yeah, you are still there. That's good.
Still there. Yeah,
you're just being librarians and hushing yourself.
They were busy discussing on a silent chat how to index the recording you'd done.
Yeah, Dewey Decimal.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Good. So any other thoughts or comments?
I think from my point of view, Paul, although it's not something we've sort of discussed in much detail today, I personally just think the new storage management facilities and functions that are coming through in the paid versions of Google Workspace are outstanding. I know it doesn't affect everybody in the same way, but if you're a larger institution, I'm just thinking back of when I was working in colleges, and if you've got like a creative media or performing arts sort of type faculty or division in your organization in colleges, they use an awful lot of storage historically because they're very, very media heavy. And the new tools that Google are rolling out for that, the ones that are already available are great, but there's also an awful lot in the pipeline, some of which we may not be able to mention today. But there are some fantastic storage management facilities coming along for the admins of the Google domain, so that you'll be able to even assign individual level quotas, if you like, and that sort of thing in much more detail than has historically been available. And I think that's making a massive difference for a lot of the bigger users, not so much schools, but in the university and college side of things. It's a big one. That.
Yeah. But I mean, I think even within schools, I think knowing who are the heavy users, who's storing endless amounts of video and nearly at their limit, particularly if you've got 100 terabytes pooled. If you know one person is a particularly heavy user of the data, then you can actually go and have a conversation, can't you? Whereas, so rather than that generic, can you all please empty your inbox because we're nearly full type messages that, no one likes responding to because it's always a bit impersonal, to actually say to people, look, I've had a quick look and my report tells me that you've got documents that you haven't touched for 4 years. Do you really need them? Can we have a purge, please? I don't know. And Dave, can you purge accounts from the admin panel yourself, or do you have to ask them to do it? You're muted, Dave.
Sorry, I'm sure we'll be able to do it using a GAM command, but I don't think that there's a way. To be honest, it's not something that I've tried. It will only become an issue for us if one of the downsides of the pooled storage is that we were working towards bringing all schools into one central domain. But if we do that, then obviously we're bringing more and more data and raising our use of data towards our storage quota. Whereas if we maintain separate domains, we get 100 terabytes per domain.
Yeah.
So it's only if we were to continue down that path that it was likely become an issue. So I've not tried to do it. What I think is really useful though is within the admin panel, I think we mentioned this last week, there's that new storage option, and it lists your top 5 users and how much they're using. Just a little bit frustrating that I was hoping to be able to expand that, and when you click on it, all it does, it takes you to the list of users and doesn't tell you how much they're using. So I think I said last week, still some areas for further development for Google, but there's some good things coming down that road.
Excellent.
Yeah, just on that, Dave, I know Ian has championed that very much with multi-academy trusts, where you might have 20 schools and all of a sudden you've got a 20th of the stories that you should have, because you've decided to sort of set your domain up the way Google asks you to do it as well, or kind of recommends you to do it. And then by doing that, you're then being penalized with a lack of storage across each of those separate domains. You would hope, as this gets a little bit closer to, they'll have a rethink on that, because it does seem a little unfair that you're not getting that storage per school as you would if you kept them all separate. So yeah, something that they probably need to think about, but they'll probably do that after July when the storage limits have come in.
Yeah, I mean, it's for us. I mean, we're a relatively small trust, so we're 6 schools at the moment, going to probably no more than 20 over the next 2 or 3 years. But for these bigger multi-academy trusts, which have got 60, 70 schools, then that is going to be a significant issue for some of them, I would have thought. So I would hope that there's some kind of rethink from Google in terms of subdomains, and maybe a certain amount per subdomain on top of that base level capacity. Because the thing is, I've been giving advice for years of storage is unlimited, so we don't need to worry about quotas, and we don't need to worry about deleting things. It's just there. Google's mission statement is to organize the world's data. Well, now it's to organize 100 terabytes of each individual organization's data. So I think they'll probably look at changing something over time, but this is what we're beholden to, isn't it, when we're using tools that are evolving like they are.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just a quick question, Dave. Were you in the top 5 most stored or not?
Let me check, actually.
He's top.
You would remember.
I'm not top. I'm definitely not. I'm not even in the top 5 on either of the domains, which I'm quite pleased with, to be honest. Although I have got one user who's got 27 terabytes. So maybe need a word there.
Is that a media teacher or something?
It's a backup account. So we have a backup account. We do cloud backups to Google Drive.
Right.
So
does it show you how it's increased over time?
No, it's quite basic at the moment. It just shows you, literally says it's just one card within the storage screen saying users using the most storage, and it lists your top 5. And you can drill down to the user, but you can't take any actions out. And you've got a button at the bottom that says view all users. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant. I'll have a ranked list of all my users. But no, it just takes you to the standard users pane within the admin panel.
All right.
So it's not as useful as it could be. That. So
have you explored the investigation tool to get that sort of analysis, Dave?
I've not, to be honest, Jamie.
Yeah, the reason I say that is I know you can do it that way, and it's once you've had to play with it as well, it's actually quite easy. So we had a university that had an awful lot of storage usage, and they wanted to identify in great detail not just who the individuals were, but what the files were and everything else. And through the investigation tool, you can actually do all of that. It's a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Thanks, Jamie.
So what's the next? My question is, what's the next data storage amount net down? So your backup file, I expect that to be large. What's the first real user? What's a large amount of data?
We've got the first real user has got 714 gigabytes.
All right. Okay, so
And
not
then-
even 1 terabyte.
No, then 600 for the second one, who is, well, he's actually left now. He was an ex-drama teacher, so that will be a lot of video files.
Yeah.
And then 300 gigabytes, one of the deputy heads. So I need to check his account out and see what video collection he's got on there.
Yeah. Harry Potter in HD.
I would imagine so, yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that they're that small, if I'm honest. Particularly with that, thinking about media. If you've got media as an offering at GCSE or A level, and they're dealing with or photography, we'll have some. They want the raw files, won't they? That could potentially be massive.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there was. I always remember there was a tool that I used to use on the server, which basically it was called WinDIR Stat, and basically it gave you a visual representation of every file that was stored on your disk as either a square or a rectangle, and the bigger the square or rectangle is, the bigger the file is. So it is a really simple way of identifying large files stored on your network. So something like that in here would be wonderful from a administrator's perspective, because you could identify folders then, and it would kind of draw a line around all the files within it. Really powerful little tool, and free. So I think I need to get onto Google and get them to buy the source code for that and incorporate it into the admin panel. That'd be great.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, I know Jason and Brendan, it's kind of not your role necessarily, but it might be worth just alerting your IT staff to the fact that there are data limits coming in, and it might be worth them doing the same investigation to look at are there some very high-end users that could be having a purge of the data, so that they're ready for when it kicks in. I think it'd be quite important for you to know, because if you do go over the limit, I presume there are costs. So, I mean, I can't remember what licenses you've got. You've got Leeds City College. Brendan's from Leeds City College. Chris, do you know?
Yeah, they're on. I was just thinking about that actually, because they're on Education Plus Legacy. They signed up to the 3-year Giuseppe deal. Yeah. Now I know with Education Plus, it's 25 gigabytes per paid student license, and for teaching and learning, it's 100 terabytes additional storage. I don't know where that falls, whether that's classed the same as Education Plus. But if you're doing that, the way that was worked out was 10 free student licenses for every staff license. So I'm not sure. You know what? I need to probably have a look into that, because it would be unfair for people like Brendan there at Leeds to not get any additional storage because they're on one of the older SKUs. Their particular SKU will run till 2023. I think October 2023 is when Leeds' Giuseppe will come to an end, and then they'll have to switch to one of the other available ones. They're not continuing them at that point. But yeah, I don't know. I've not got anything on that. I need to probably have a look into that, because July is fast approaching. So I'll put a shout into Lance at Google and just see if he can give me some insights on what pre-existing legacy subscribers get as additional data.
Yeah.
We're on Legacy as well, Chris.
Hi, mate. Yeah.
We do get some additional over and above the 100 terabytes. I think it's per staff account, because it's I know that on one of our domains we've got slightly more users than the other.
Yeah.
I think we get something like, is it 100 gig per license?
Yeah, it is. If it's worked the same way as teaching and learning, which is on a staff count, then that is 100 gig per additional user.
That's
so
what we're on.
If they've done it the same as that, Dave, then I guess that would kind of make sense, even though it's a different SKU to Education Plus Legacy. It is both of them are based on staff numbers, so that would make some kind of sense. Okay, fine. I'll quadruple check that with Lance at Google, Brendan, just to get back to you on that. But that looks like it might be 100 terabytes per paid staff license from what our friend Dave is telling us there.
Well, it's 100 gigabytes per
Sorry,
staff.
100 gig. Sorry, not 100 terabytes. It'd be quids,
on
wouldn't it?
top of your 100 terabytes,
Yeah,
you get 100
yeah.
terabytes base level, and then
You do.
100 gig per license on top of
Yeah,
that.
you do. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that, mate.
No worries.
At the very beginning, we mentioned, Judith, about me helping you get your sharing and pinning sorted on your Apple device. If you take that thing I've just typed into the chat, into the in-call messages, and put it in a web browser, that will take you to my calendar where you can book a slot for me and you to work through that, so we get that resolved. I'm sure there'll be a way to sort it, but it could just be some buttons have moved as part of the last update.
Okay, thank you.
You're not using the Google meeting schedule tool, Paul, that they've just released?
And the new appointments one, you mean? No, I'm not yet. I have looked at it actually, but this kind of tracks everything through our HubSpot, so it's a very useful tool, so that everyone has sight of what's going on. So if things need to be picked up by a colleague, then it's easier for them to do it that way.
The Google one works very well, actually. I was quite impressed with it.
Yeah.
Big improvement.
Yeah. I mean, the last one was nice, but yeah, it was a bit clunky, wasn't it, to say the least. I used the last one in my last year at my school, and before I left teaching, to organise all my parents' evenings and things, and worked really well. I was really pleased with it, because you can stick links in the description and things, so you've got links to all the kids' work. Because all my kids had portfolios of all the work for each unit of work they did, so I could literally go to that and show the parents during parents' evening just by turning my screen around. It was really handy. It worked really well. But yeah, it's much slicker now. And that you can specify, times that you can leave things out, and you've got a lot more control about what to allow them, which is great.
Yeah,
that was an update. Not last month, the month before was the new appointment scheduler, I think. So if you haven't had that update, let Chris know, and Chris will send that month's out to you. That's the way to do it. So we're only at 3/4 through the hour, but there's no need to stay unless people have a particular question they want to ask. I'll stop the recording now. The next update is in June. I've got the date in my head. I didn't put it in the slide deck either. I apologise for that. I need to find that link. It is in my calendar. It's up here. That's why. Oh, I'm going to ask about how did I look?
6th, 7th, I think it'll be, Paul. Looking at the
June the 6th and June the 7th.
Looking at the weight falls this time. Yeah,
exactly right. So it's June the 6th for the user updates and June the 7th for the Techie Tuesday updates. So